All right, well, welcome everybody. Glad to have you with us today. The topic is the 2017 Recruitment Marketing Technology Outlook. It's based on a survey that we did at Talemetry here recently, and we're excited to present the results of that survey, taking a look at kind of what the overall pulse of the marketplace here is, or the industry is, when it comes to recruitment marketing technology. My name is Ian Alexander. I head up marketing for Talemetry, and I'm joined today by Stephen Schwander. Stephen, good afternoon.
Good afternoon. Good to be here.
Good to have you. And Stephen heads up our client solutions group. And Stephen and I do a lot of these webinars together because we kind of have a nice complementing experience base. Stephen has spent many, many years both in recruiting as a recruiter and in recruitment leadership within corporate America, and he's also spent many years as in the capacity that he is with Talemetry now, which he works with our clients and other organizations to help them leveraging technology to achieve their recruiting strategies. So we've got the recruitment side of recruitment marketing, and then the marketing side. I've spent many, many years in traditional marketing, both consumer and business to business, as well as most of my career marketing HCM technologies. So he's kind of the chocolate, I'm the peanut butter, and we try and bring those perspectives as we talk about recruitment marketing, and that's what we're here to do today. A little bit of housekeeping. Please feel free to ask questions throughout the webinar. We'd love to see the questions coming in as you get them. Most often we'll address those questions at the end, but if something's appropriate to what we're talking about right there, we'll grab a question out and deal with it right away. So ask them when you get them. The other side of it is, why are we so interested in recruitment marketing? Well, Talemetry is an award-winning provider of a recruitment marketing platform, and we give organizations all the tools and the analytics to manage and execute all their strategies with regards to getting more of the right candidates. We give them the analytics to take a look at every program, every source, every activity that they're doing to get those candidates, and understand which ones are working and resulting in hires and which ones aren't, so that they can optimize their recruiting operations. So that's where the nature of our interest comes in. And what we did in the fourth quarter of last year was we tapped our own clients and prospective clients to kind of get an understanding of what are their recruiting challenges, what are their recruiting marketing technology challenges, how are they meeting those challenges, how do they use recruitment marketing technology, and what's on the docket for next year as they look to leverage technology to support evolving practices when it comes to recruitment marketing. And what we're about to talk about are the results of that survey. So let's jump right in, take a look at the agenda. First off, we're going to take the survey one question at a time so we can discuss the actual responses of the survey, and then we're going to look at some of the key takeaways that we observed from the survey. So kind of the wrap up. What do we take away at the end of the day? What is this telling us as practitioners, as vendors, etc., within the market here? And then finally, we'll take questions and wrap up. So when we set out to do this, I think most of the people on the webinar today understand that recruiting is kind of unique in that there are hundreds, if not thousands, of niche technology solutions for getting more candidates. So part of the exercise here is kind of whittling that down to a manageable list. And so what you see here on the right is what we whittled, again, dozens, hundreds of potential solutions into what we think are the most used, the most appropriate, most relevant ones for today. So that's resume database searching and sourcing. That's distributing jobs out to job boards. That's employee referral systems that manage and enable employee referrals. That's systems for managing diversity hiring, tracking and managing those efforts. Candidate relationship management tools for centralizing candidates, potential candidates, pre-applicants, and engaging them over time and putting some structure to your overall talent acquisition efforts. career sites services, platforms or services. So that whether that's the career sites that your ATS comes with, or whether that's non-ATS third-party career sites, those the online experiences and the technology that provides them. Career site job applications, whether those job applications are part of your ATS or whether those are outside your ATS through a third party. Talent network systems, so systems for engaging candidates who may be passive, may not find a job that works for them within your organization, but are interested in your organization and want to engage with you. Those systems. Managing recruitment agencies, so systems for managing the distribution of jobs out to agencies, managing the flow of those jobs, those candidates back to you, managing the agency relationship, the cost, the usage, etc. Website analytics, so any kinds of systems that you use to see what your career site traffic is, where that traffic came from, where that traffic might be. You might be losing candidates, etc. Website candidate experience measurement, so any systems that you use for getting feedback from candidates, whether that's pre-application or whether that's post-application. And finally, recruitment marketing platforms, so platforms that are available that combine a few or most or all of these tools into one sort of platform that integrates them across the platform. So that's how we defined recruitment marketing technology for the people who answered the survey. So all the answers come with that basis in knowledge. And first of all, the thing we did was we wanted to understand who was giving us the feedback. So as we look at the respondent profile, we had a good mix of larger companies and smaller companies. So as you can see there, a good spread between under 1,000, over 10,000, similar numbers. We broke it out at 2,500, so we had about 51% under 2,500 employees and 49% over 2,500 employees. Part of that is an artificial kind of line that we drew based on, as a company, Talemetry. We work with enterprise clients, so our solutions are typically most appropriate, most affordable for larger organizations over 2,500 employees. So that's sort of the line in the sand that we drew, but as you can see, for your own purposes, we have the full data there in terms of what size of organization participated in the survey. And then what role do you hold within the organization? And a couple of facets to that. We were pleased by design. We got a majority of recruiting practitioners. So nearly 50% recruiting. Because in smaller organizations there's more generalization, less specialization. We know HR is a big part of this. So we got a good over a quarter of the respondents were within the HR realm. And then the rest are mixed between consultant and other. And I would tell you the other portion of the survey, people who answered other, were predominantly sort of just different titles, different ways of looking at recruiting, HR, consulting. All right, so not a big affect to the data there. And then as we look at the roles by level, again, a good mix. If you look at executive, manager, and practitioner, a good mix of executives, people managing the process, as well as practitioners and some representation of technologists as well. And again, consulting and other kind of fall within the same levels as the role as which you would expect. So multifaceted. The takeaway there is a broad base of feedback by role and by level. And as we get into the actual questions themselves, we ask people which of the following recruitment marketing. Oh, sorry, Stephen, you're going to do this one. Jump in on this.
Yeah, not a problem. So actually, there we go. Had to unlock my screen there. So our analysis is basically taking a look at the following. So you know what, Ian, take over. I just lost all the screen. I'll let you know when I'm back.
Okay, well, we're back where we started. So we wanted to know kind of what technologies people are using out there, right? And of the list that we had, less than half of the respondents were using things like candidate relationship management, diversity hiring management tools, talent networks, etc. But on the flip side, pretty widely, almost 86% of organizations were using a job posting solution of some sort. This is expected. This is the sort of historical way that organizations have adapted to recruiting, is really leveraging those job boards. So seeing wide use of that kind of technology within organizations is not surprising. As we look at this, where I think the marketplace needs to go, or organizations need to go, is really towards a broader mix of these kinds of strategies and technologies, because no single sort of recruitment marketing uh, technology is going to be sort of a panacea, and we see kind of job posting and job distribution has assumed that role over the years, but as you'll see as we look through the responses to the survey, it's one of the biggest issues that organizations are facing, is how do we get beyond job distribution and implement new strategies and the technologies behind those strategies.
Thanks, Ian. You did a great job on my behalf. I appreciate that. I do have my screen back, and I will jump in and say, when you went through that first slide on the definition of the technology, I thought, wow, I'm almost exhausted just thinking about what all of that is. And what you've just said here reminds me of the fact that recruitment marketing has so many different phases and facets and technologies and tools that it's really important for us to take a look at this from an enterprise perspective and a solutions perspective as to how all of these things, or at least the bits and bobs, work together to drive success. So CRM and diversity tracking solutions, they showed an interesting, I think this result is interesting, that there was a significant lower satisfaction than the other solutions, right? Now, our thought here is that when you look at these other solutions, they're a little bit older in the marketplace. I mean, I started, recruiting back, I like to say, before the internet, which was frankly true, and I put in one of the first ATS solutions for the company that I worked in, and then we started to job distribute out of that. So a lot of the solutions that you see in the list here are certainly older. They're becoming a little bit more commoditized in terms of single point solutions, but the CRM tools are showing an interesting lower satisfaction, but also diversity and inclusion tracking as well. And there really aren't. There are some solutions and services out there that help you with diversity and inclusion, but from a platform status, there's not necessarily solutions that are just working on that. We like to encourage our clients to use their CRM and overall marketing platform to create a solution to do those things. And I had a couple of thoughts in terms of why this dissatisfaction. If I could have a town hall session with the people who responded somewhat negatively here, I had asked them a couple of questions. First of all, I'd ask, how do they define CRM? What exactly is CRM? As I travel the country almost 3 or 4 times a month and sit with clients that are looking to accomplish things, I find that there's a diversity in terms of how they define CRM, what they want to accomplish with CRM. I'd ask, how integrated is that CRM to their overall process, number one, and into their ATS and additional tools, number two. I'd also ask what they're trying to accomplish. If there's some dissatisfaction, is it because it's not driving value? Is it because it's not as user-friendly as they had hoped? Is it because they can't put in the kinds of processes that they had hoped to put in? Is it because they're trying to do too much with it, and that's not working in terms of the steps in the process, etc., and not coming to the solution with a more simplified approach? Or is it a change management issue? So certainly, Ian, I'm really curious to learn and dig deeper as I travel this year at that satisfaction index for CRM.
Yeah, and it's the relative newness of that particular function within recruiting. Oftentimes organizations, and we'll see from some of the future answers, organizations are looking to accomplish that with maybe technologies that aren't designed to do that, like an applicant tracking system. It's getting strategically your mind around what, as you said, Stephen, what are your goals, et cetera. But the interesting thing for me here, and it's going to come up again, is people are pretty happy with their job distribution. So we've got predominantly people, the most used recruitment marketing technology is posting job ads, and everybody's pretty happy with it. So interesting, and we'll revisit that as we get to some of the other questions.
So as we take a look at which technologies do companies plan to acquire or improve over the next 18 months, this is kind of interesting. So, we recognize there's not any real clear winners here, but there's definitely a deviance between the leading answer, right? And if you go down to the 10th most popular answer. And so when we look at this together, and we combine sort of things like job application, solution, and career site service or platform, there's a real focus around candidate experience. And I think, as the web continues to evolve, as we continue to buy more, as we all did online again this past Christmas, and continue to do more of our daily lives online, the expectation of how simple it is to find jobs and to apply for jobs becomes really important from a candidate experience perspective. So, as we look at this, it's going to continue to be important because it's important for us to be able to target the right candidates. Nothing more frustrating when I go online and I see information that just isn't relevant to me. And then the second area of candidate experience is absolutely critical from our perspective is how quickly can we convert those visitors into, let's say, registered talent network folks or visitors into applicants. So we'll see a real focus on that in the coming year.
Yeah, and what I find interesting about this is bookends here. You look at job application solution. Oh, never mind. I'm gonna back out of that particular observation until a little bit later on. So,
And this is you.
all right. So when it comes to recruitment marketing tools, we have colon. So what we're really doing here is we want to understand, how are organizations consuming technologies? Again, I mentioned that there are dozens, if not hundreds, of different technologies for getting more of the right candidates, right? That pre-applicant candidate acquisition space. We want to know: are people overwhelmed by those tools? Are they using too many of them? And the answer was a pretty resounding: we don't have enough tools. We need more, right? So pretty significantly. And to me, this speaks to sort of immature practices, immature technology marketplace, immature technologies. And the reason I say that is because when you compare this sort of growth in technology or this expansion of technology around automating recruitment and recruitment marketing, traditional sales and marketing went through the same kind of adoption cycle, and it typically goes like this. You have a number of different processes around a specific task, in this case acquiring new prospective customers and working with those customers over time to close them into real customers. There's dozens of different things you do around that, whether that be email marketing, whether that be social promotion, whether that be website development and analysis. There's just a tremendous number of tools that you use, and over the adoption cycle, you see these technology tools come out, and organizations adopt them to solve point solution issues. And then at some point, you get to the point where you've got a lot of these tools, you've got a lot of data silos, and you really have no way of tying all this data together. That sort of journey from initial contact with a potential customer, all the way through nurturing that customer, all the way through converting that customer, and then analyzing how you did it and whether you did it in the most efficient way possible. You get to this large group of solutions and you say, wait a second, I need A, a single vendor and I need a single view of all this stuff working. And that's how it worked with marketing automation and sales automation, is you've got this continuum from lots of tools down to consolidating down to a platform or just a few integrated tools to manage the process. And because we're not seeing that here in recruitment marketing technologies, and organizations are still saying, give me more tools, I need help to execute these particular functions, we're at the early stage of adoption here. And what I would expect to see is an adoption of a lot of tools and then a consolidation down into a platform or a smaller assembly of tools as well. Maybe ask people, like, what are the biggest challenges that you have regardless of recruitment marketing technology? What are you struggling with right now in your organization? And again, we had an unambiguous answer of we don't have enough qualified candidates. And that's not surprising. I don't think I've ever talked to a recruiter who says I've got, well, no, I have. Actually, I've talked to recruiters who have too many unqualified candidates, but I've never talked to a recruiter that says I just have so many qualified candidates, it's becoming a problem for me. So not surprised by that answer, but when you map that answer back to other questions like what's your most used recruitment marketing technology? Well, that would be job ad posting. What are you most satisfied with? Well, job ad posting is working great. What's your biggest challenge? I don't have enough qualified candidates. There's a big disconnect there. And I think that's reflective of organizations being at a certain point and evolving from past practices, which are very transactional. You get a job, you post, you get candidates, you hire somebody, you get another job opening, you climb that hill all over again, do the same stuff, which is traditionally how things have been done, but evolving practices of moving away from that. And so organizations are at this point where they need to move beyond, they need to augment that with more complementary programs to get candidates in other ways. But if you look at the number 2 answer there, it's I don't have enough budget to drive the needed results. And that is a big issue for many organizations that we talk with, in that if you look at the history over the last 8 years or so, we had a recession, we had very high unemployment, we had organizations facing tremendous revenue headwinds, and over that time, when recruiting was not as important, budgets, by the way, which were not large in comparison in the first place, were cut. Because obviously organizations needed to maximize their profits in those environments, and over the last 4 years or so, that situation has turned around dramatically. We have low candidate supply and high candidate demand, especially within specialized positions, and recruiting organizations are being asked to ramp up very quickly and meet very high hiring goals to help their organizations succeed in their strategies, but they don't have the core sort of processes and technologies to do that. And that's where this painful transition is kind of happening in corporate recruiting processes, departments.
It's interesting that you say that, Ian, because I was thinking back to that dissatisfaction on the CRM side, and I think some of that might be related to data as well. We've got some clients, for instance, who have databases, internal databases that they control and manage and manipulate that are over 10 million in size. But it leads me to wonder, since I kind of started in this business as a headhunter on the agency side, again, what types of processes are in place, and certainly these processes are not inexpensive either, but to grow and mature the quality of their database and understanding actually what data they already own and the value that's there, as opposed to just kind of the view that it's always external data that is the most relevant versus internal. So definitely some challenges there from a strategy perspective as well.
Yeah, and by data you mean candidate resume,
candidate resumes,
data.
profiles, etc. Yeah, exactly. So how much do we know about them, and how much do we spend internal resources to actually develop intelligence around that data, as opposed to hoping the specifically absolutely correct LinkedIn profile pops up on my page at the right time, when somebody needs a job and I need to fill one. So again, even with all this data, we tend to be more passive than we are proactive in terms of growing that data.
Right, and we have a bit of a chicken and egg situation here, because one of the ways out of that situation, that inability to scale, because I don't have the processes and systems in place to scale. I'm coming off of a sort of legacy transactional model of recruiting, and now I need to use that lever to ramp up my recruiting and be more effective in recruiting candidates that may already be employed, etc. But I don't have enough budget. Well, one of the ways out, or the primary way out of that, is investing in technologies that allow you to standardize your processes, centralize your talent, get intelligent about how you pipeline your talent, get better tools for going out and getting that talent and converting interested candidates into applicants, and then being able to understand what's working, what's not. That requires an investment. But that investment, as we, in our experience, pays off more than pays for itself, in terms of allowing you to fully understand where your successes are, where your successes aren't in terms of your candidate acquisition efforts, and do more of what works and less of what doesn't work, and build sort of a centralized talent pool, a growing centralized talent pool that makes your overall recruiting faster, higher quality, and lower cost. So it's, as I say, kind of a chicken and an egg situation. To get out of where organizations are right now, they need to kind of make that step over the chasm to get to that next level of full recruitment marketing capability and the ability to really maximize their recruitment operations to get the most out of it. And then we asked question number 8, what are your top sources of hire? And it's not a surprise, job boards, top source of hire. You see we're adding these up. We predominantly use job boards. We're super satisfied with our job distribution technology. We don't have enough candidates, and job boards are our top source of hire. This is really reinforcing that theme that organizations need to do more than just job boards, and maybe do less of job boards and more of other things. So it's historically been the most popular method. We've talked about that. Employee referrals, I think it's pretty broadly known that employee referral programs are a great source of high quality candidates, great source of hires. But it also should be noted, in terms of all these sources of hires, employee referrals are great. They're not scalable. In other words, you can get a certain level of candidates and hires out of employee referrals, but when you need to hire 300 people in a region within the next month, you can't lean on your employee referrals to get a lot of candidates really quickly. So it's not as inherently scalable as some of these other areas, and that could be again contributing to that difficulty getting enough qualified candidates. And then what are the top recruitment marketing technology challenges that you face? And if you look at the 4 top answers, engaging past applicants was the #1 challenge that organizations are facing. Lack of ATS recruitment marketing capability is right behind them. An inconsistent employer brand, and no centralized talent pool sort of round out the top 4. And if you look at that top 4, to us that says that's a CRM issue, right? And Stephen talks about how do you define CRM. CRM's kind of largely defined by its ability to centralize your talent, allow you to understand what potential candidates you have in your talent pool, both internal candidates being employees and people locked in your ATS, past applicants, and external sources of talent, those job boards, those resume databases, the open web, social networks. Being able to kind of centralize all of those sources of talent into a single a single candidate relationship management system and then engage that talent, whether you're inviting them to apply, whether you're educating them about your organization, whether you're presenting them with jobs that are most appropriate for them. That's where that capability comes in. So again, when you're a hammer, everything looks like a nail, right? But from telemetry, we see this as really a CRM issue when you look at the top challenges that organizations are facing. And again, looking to your ATS, we'll talk about in a future question, has its own set of complications around it when it comes to this sort of lack of applicant tracking systems providing recruitment marketing capability. And this next question we ask because we want to know who do you look to get these kinds of solutions? What are your strategies around getting technology solutions for recruitment marketing? And as you can see, the top two answers there is, organizations are pretty significantly looking to their ATS providers for that recruitment marketing capability, which makes sense, right? That's the core technology that you use to manage the hiring process. So you would look to those vendors for that kind of capability. What I thought was very interesting is that organizations would investigate a new ATS to meet their future recruitment marketing technology needs. So that's one way to go about it. I would tell you, as an organization that works with many ATS providers, and we augment many ATSs because we integrate with them, there is recruitment marketing capability within most ATSs. There is more coming out each year, but the gap between whether it's point solutions for doing sourcing or candidate experience or job distribution, et cetera, or whether it's recruitment marketing platforms. They're many years into this game and have invested tremendous amounts of money in really perfecting that. So applicant tracking vendors will take a fair amount of time to catch up if it's possible that they catch up. That's why Talemetry will work with many applicant tracking companies to integrate with them, so those client bases can get very sophisticated and integrated recruitment marketing capability without having to be at the mercy of development timetables and priorities of their ATS vendors.
And I think it's important to remember all the way back to that first slide too, all of the elements that make up and define recruitment marketing overall. And I think ATSs are going to get better at certain aspects of those. But you're absolutely right, Ian, in terms of a gap that will always exist, and most likely. And if it doesn't, the time that's going to take to catch up. And I think as you look at this, these are not mutually exclusive options, right? And with a solution hat on, I would be encouraging people to take a look at the overall, solution, and how many people say, well, we know we've got a marketing gap, so let's go upgrade our ATS, and it still pushes those gaps off, oftentimes, well beyond the implementation of that ATS, as opposed to taking a real full-on look from a more integrated perspective, a more solutions-oriented perspective at what are we trying to do, and how does my recruitment marketing platform and my ATS work together to do what we need to do it. So there's some interesting concepts behind these numbers here.
Yeah, and as with any technology purchase, what you believe you're getting and what processes you believe are supported, oftentimes you don't know what you don't know. And so when you then finally implement that and you get that upgraded capability, there may be more gaps in the functionality than you realize going in. And that's with any technology purchase. So again, if you're one of the companies that is looking at, well, we're going to replace our ATS because we need to get more CRM capability, or we need to get more sourcing capability, whatever it happens to be, better candidate experience. Just keep in mind that better to investigate companies and vendors that really know that market space, that know where the gaps are that you don't know about, and are really up on modern strategies and processes for doing these kinds of things, as opposed to looking at bullet points on a product sheet and assuming that the capability is going to be there once you get it in and implemented. Now, as we're looking towards 2017, we asked people to rank their most important overall recruitment technology and initiatives for 2017. In other words, this is where we're going to turn our attention in 2017 to either bolster what we have or even acquire new capability. And not surprising to us that the number one answer was increasing our use of candidate sourcing tools. We talk to organizations all the time. This is one of the biggest topics, is how do we go from, and again, this comes to sort of augmenting that attraction-based methodology that most organizations typically use, which is, getting your jobs out in front of people, whether it be on job ads or social networks, et cetera, putting the jobs in front of people and attracting them to those jobs versus going out and really finding that specialized talent that they need, or finding that talent that may not be active out there looking for a job, but is really the kind of talent that your organization needs to succeed. So we are happy to see organizations leaning that way. It backs up what we see out in the field. Again, second is employee referrals. And again, job ad distribution, social content management, mobile career sites and apps. These are all the areas that organizations are going to be most focused on, less focused on things like video job descriptions, video interviewing, interview scheduling, et cetera. So yeah, that is the focus for 2017. And with that, Stephen, talk a little bit about what some of our key takeaways are from this entire exercise.
Sure, absolutely. So, as we digest this survey and think about what's happening in 2017, I mean, frankly, this first one, is it's been there for a couple of years now, right? Organizations are absolutely desperate for more qualified candidates. So, again, 71% of our respondents said they're not getting enough qualified applicants. So I really think there needs to be some, real solid thinking there about, how do they, number one, get more data in, and number two, what do they do with the data that's in there, and how do they really drive that, right? So recruiting organizations are, also looking to their ATS provider for marketing solutions, and they're not necessarily getting what they need, but they understand that, that is the core. If you think about, an end-to-end recruitment process, it doesn't exist without an ATS for most organizations, right? So it's natural that they're going to want to see, that primary source of their solution grow in this area. So again, 45% would consider changing ATS vendors for more recruitment market capability, as we said earlier. Caveat there is we need to understand what the gaps are. 42% are going to try to adopt whatever recruitment capability is in their ATS, and then 40% cite sort of a lack of recruitment marketing support from their ATS as their top recruitment marketing technology challenge. I think, anecdotally for us, as we work with our ATS partners, we oftentimes are now starting to have a wider conversation that brings in the solution folks from the ATS, as well as our solution team, so that we can come to clients with an approach that isn't necessarily all one or the other, but meets a wider range of needs.
And then next on there, organizations are depending on job distribution tools and job boards for candidates. So, Stephen, you want to talk about that a little bit?
Yep. Unless you've lost my vocal, I was actually speaking. I don't know if it went silent. Can you hear me now? Okay. Yeah. Yeah, excellent. So you've heard Ian say before, right, that there's a lot more dependency and also satisfaction in terms of what they're getting out of job distribution. Anecdotally, I'll tell you that most clients that I walk into are using 2 or 3 mechanisms to get their jobs out into the marketplace, and so I think that analytics is somewhat of a challenge. But 85% are using some sort of job distribution tool. 70% are citing job boards as a top source of hire, and so there's a high satisfaction there. But when we come and look at a more integrated approach, we always want to kind of keep that in mind as well. Now, despite the reliance and satisfaction with job distribution, organizations want more recruitment marketing technologies, right? So they're happy with that, but they want more. 54% said they need more recruitment marketing tools, and 71% are not getting enough qualified applicants, again, from those tools. So it's important to not only see what additional tools do they need in the organizations, but how are those going to work together? And again, on my soapbox, I really argue that we need to have a more holistic approach to what we're doing, so we see how these tools work together in a organized fashion.
Yep. We touched on it before. Recruiting organizations are looking to more proactive recruiting strategies in 2017, and we saw that sourcing tools are ranked #1 in terms of recruitment marketing initiatives, and followed by #2, focusing on employee referral tools. Those are all very proactive ways to go out and find the candidates that you need, as opposed to attracting those candidates to you. So we think this is a good direction, and we think it's supported by the data. And then candidate experience tops the shopping list for recruitment marketing technologies in 2017. So there were, as we said in the slide for the question, there's not huge clear winners here. They were very kind of evenly bunched there, but when you put together that 30% would acquire or improve their job applications, and 29% said that they would acquire or improve their current career site platforms or services, it's really, to us, acknowledging the fact that candidate experience is being taken much more seriously by corporate recruiting organizations. Obviously, candidates are customers. Candidates are getting younger, and we're relying more on Gen Y and now Gen Zs into the workforce. These are digital natives. They're used to very simple and effective technology, whether it's as a consumer or whether it's within the enterprise. So these trends are growing, and organizations are responding to them. And if your biggest challenge is not getting enough qualified applicants, well, it comes down to your candidate experience. When you have 100% of people who interact with you in any way, whether it's a recruiter inviting someone to apply for a job, whether it's someone coming from a job board to view jobs and view your organization, pretty much 100% of the people that you're trying to get to apply for your jobs and ultimately hire are ending up on your career site and going through your application process in some way or another. So when you look at that 100%, what percent are turning into applicants and hires? Is it 1% or is it 10%? And that's where the value of focusing on that candidate experience really comes to a real dollars and cents benefit. Because if you can turn a 1% conversion rate from visitor to applicant into a 10% conversion rate, you've just gotten multiples more candidates for little to no additional cost. And then finally, engaging candidates is the top recruitment marketing technology challenge for 2017. So 40% of people said that engaging candidates is their #1 recruitment marketing challenge. And organizations were least satisfied with their candidate relationship management systems. Now that could be their candidate relationship management system is an Excel spreadsheet, or it could mean their candidate relationship management system is trying to use their ATS in that regard, whether the ATS supports it a little bit, not at all, or more than a little bit. Or it could be a standalone ATS CRM system that sits outside of the rest of their recruiting process and doesn't integrate with their ATS. There's probably a number of different reasons for this. One more, which is it's early days for this stuff, right? Candidate relationship management, really implementing the strategies and the processes around that are not widely understood and are not widely being practiced. So there's a lot of factors that contribute to this, but the good news is that organizations are really focusing on this in 2017, acquiring more sourcing capability, et cetera. So we see this as sort of the big challenge that organizations are struggling with here going into 2017. So with that, if we have any questions, we'll take a look at some of the questions that came in. One of which is there are a lot of videos, companies showing about their culture and why to work for them, which does not have a question mark at the end of it and is a true statement. And Interestingly enough, things like video job descriptions scored kind of lower than I thought what they would have scored um, in the surveys in terms of people focusing on those or making those a priority within their organization.
But I think I was thinking about that because I saw that comment come in, and I think that when you look at platforms, and there's some wonderful video interview platforms out there, and that really helps with the selection and assessment process more so than with a marketing process per se. I think video interviews potentially are a good marketing, but that's a really tough thing for companies to pull off. This comment raises an issue for me around the candidate experience and candidate engagement side. So, when candidates come to my career site, number one, can they find jobs absolutely quickly and immediately? Can they find jobs that are relevant to who they are and where they are? Automatically and immediately and very simply, and then thirdly, can they learn something more about me than what a job description provides, me being a company, right? So that they kind of get a sense of whether or not this is the right place for them to work. And I think there's a huge role for that, and I think it falls under the the career site candidate experience role. So what level of video content can you get to relative to not necessarily an individual job, but certainly to the level of a job family, for instance. So I think it has a huge role to play on the candidate experience side. Definitely lost Ian. I tried to jump in here, so I'm not sure if anybody can hear me or not. Um, it is possible to have the presentation sent via email, and I know that our marketing team will follow up with that, absolutely. I also appreciated the comment about candidates being much more knowledgeable about company from LinkedIn, Glassdoor reviews, etc. And that's a really good point that that was made by one of our viewers as well. And again, that calls us to have that much more overall view of candidate experience, that it doesn't just start when people land on our career site. We have to understand what's happening. And there are some really good widgets that we're being asked by our candidates to build into the front end, or I'm sorry, our clients to build into the front end too, that will bring together some of that information that candidates are capturing outside and bringing those into the career site as well. Well, I don't see any other questions or comments at this point, but certainly Ian and his team will send out not only this PowerPoint and webinar, but also results of the wider survey, and you'll be able to get that as well. If you're interested in learning anything more about telemetry, I really encourage you to reach out to Ian and his team, and we've got all of the contact information on the